Hello, everybody, and welcome to OMOP to FHIR Bulk Data API used for MENDS. Our speaker today is Bob Zambarano. And Bob, we're going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. So glad everybody is here. Just wanted to start with some acknowledgements. This work was supported by a grant to the National Association of Chronic Disease Directors by the Centers for Disease Control. Additional support to the University of Colorado Health Data Compass Research Institute came from Google. Who am I? I'm Bob Zambarano, PhD. I'm the Vice President of Healthcare Analytics at Commonwealth Informatics. We're a small software and healthcare data consulting company out of Waltham, Massachusetts. I typically work remotely from Austin, Texas. I'm currently in Maine, in the Rockland area. So it's all virtual. So here's the presentation overview. I'm going to set some context and talk about the MENDS project and the ESP Health software system that it uses. Talk about our data partners in the MENDS program and the issue of provisioning the ESP Health data marts, and then move on to the FHIR Bulk Data API and talk about the one data partner, Health Data Compass, and their FHIR Bulk Data Service. Look at the data flows that we've built and talk about where the software is or will be available. And then I have some conclusions. So first, what is MENDS? MENDS is the acronym for Multi-State EHR-Based Network for Disease Surveillance. It's a 5-year pilot project sponsored by the CDC and the National Association of Chronic Disease Directors to design and implement a national sentinel chronic disease surveillance system. It uses a distributed analytic network model, and it's based around the technical components that were built and are used successfully in the state of Massachusetts for the distributed analytic network for chronic disease surveillance that's called MDPHNet. ESP Health is the open source free license product suite used by MDPHNet and MENDS, among others. It's an acronym for EHR Support for Public Health. It was developed by Harvard Medical School's Department of Population Medicine and the Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare Institute. First funding for it was from 2005 under a CDC Centers for Excellence grant. And it's been used for a number of things. It supports a number of different things besides just chronic disease surveillance and distributed network analytics. It was pretty much, I believe, the first production electronic case reporting system, and it is still used for that in the state of Massachusetts. And it's essentially a sibling to and functions analogously to 2 other distributed analytic network systems you may know of, which is PCORnet and FDA Sentinel. So how does it work? You'll have multiple clinical data partners, each with their own EHR systems, which provision an ESP data mart, which has a standard data model. And this contains it's a limited data set typically in that it doesn't have all the patient data, but it has patient level data from the electronic health record system. And that sits behind a firewall, but on a monthly basis, it provisions a visualization tool that is available on the web to authorized users who can see aggregate level information. The aggregate level information in the RISC visualization system is at the 5-digit zip code. So it is also a limited data set. So it does have some PHI in it. And then the PopMedNet tool is used for distributing queries. So users can create queries to run against the data models in each of the data partner connected ESP systems. Those queries are distributed. They're run through a local data mart client that connects to the database, generates aggregate results, sends those back to the portal for review by the analyst. That's a distributed analytic research model. Who are the MENDS data partners using ESP Health? There's One Health Port with coverage in Washington State. There's ReachNet, the Louisiana Public Health Institute. They have Louisiana and Texas data. Alliance Chicago has coverage primarily in Illinois and Texas. Reagan Street Institute with coverage in Indiana, and Health Data Compass with coverage in Colorado. So provisioning the ESP data marts is the kind of topic du jour. So we have lots of different kind of pre-built ETL for the ESP data mart system. It'll be able to work with PCORI data, with OMOP data. There's a CCDA parsing system. We have code for pulling data from Clarity, from Epic Clarity, Epic Cache as well. There's also SQL for pulling data out of Athena IDX, which used to be GE Centricity. But ETL is a significant pain point in projects that don't meet those above kind of pre-established ETL sets. Particularly with custom built or kind of very rarely seen reporting data warehouses. And that seemed to have been the situation for a couple of our sites that we worked with under MENDS. And also, given the current regulatory imperative around the FHIR API, adding the FHIR Bulk Data Client to the ESP repertoire of ETL has been longstanding goal. We've been trying to find somebody who wanted to do this with us probably since 2017. So Health Data Compass, how did they get a FHIR bulk data service? So the MENDS project began looking for a fifth data partner in late 2020. The CDC has been encouraging utilization of the FHIR APIs for projects that develop data systems that interoperate with AHR data, and we fit into that. The MENDS team spent several months looking for a large healthcare organization who would be interested in participating in the project and who either had or was ready to implement a FHIR bulk data service. And Health Data Compass was a healthcare data research institute with the University of Colorado. They were interested in doing this, and we began working with them about a year ago. So here's the data flow, which people will have questions about, I'm sure. It starts from the UC Health Clinical Data Warehouse. It moves through Cloud Composer and the AllSpark, which is basically a filtering and validation in-house system, into an OMOP structure. So there's OMOP in here. And then OMOP JSON is then, or the OMOP data is then serialized to JSON using the Google Cloud data flow. And then there is a WSDL transform that moves the JSON OMOP structure into the FHIR ND-JSON, and it is a request to the FHIR Bulk Data Service that triggers the cloud data flow and subsequent WSDL transform process. So for the ESP FHIR Bulk Data Client, it's a Python app. It uses the requested resources: patient encounter, condition, observation, claim, medication request, and immunization. So I think you get a feel for the type of data that goes into the ESP data warehouse. The authentication process, the initial connection uses the Google Healthcare API, and there's a pre-shared account key. The ND-JSON from the FHIR Bulk Data Service is loaded into Postgres JSON-B data type, and then there's a Python Django application that parses the ND-JSON resource structures into the ESP data model. So there is code that's under development. We're updating it. This is not released code, but you could find it at these links. And just to be clear, in particular, that second link, which is the tool that is parsing the ND-JSON, I don't even think the latest working version that we have has been checked in yet because we're still tweaking it, but this is where it would go. It's loadfire.py. And this is really existing in the context of the larger ESP application and data warehouse framework. Health Data Compass has not released their code yet, but it's going to be made available through the OMOP community. So conclusions, the bulk data and resource APIs are so well specified that the development work was pretty much the easiest part around building the client and services. The significant effort really is understanding the source and target data structures and the transformations that had to occur. And as always, and this is what I always forget in these projects, right? The technical folks tend to focus on the things that are technical, but the biggest barriers are always coordinating with and obtaining appropriate authorization from the different organizational entities responsible for data privacy and security. Oops, let me go back if I can. The files are large. Because we're provisioning a system that's based on essentially all the patient's data and their medical histories going back to 2017, because the MENDS project is trying to really establish information about patient medical histories and chronic diseases going back to 2017. So the ND-JSON file for observations is close to 1 terabyte in size. And lastly, this has been a significant effort, but we feel like this is a great addition to the ESP Health system. And subsequently, we hope to add additional partners into the system who can use this and make the process of joining the MENDS project or other ESP Health projects. There are several around the country. Local, regional projects, and this should make things more straightforward for people, for organizations that want to join. Here's my contact information. And now it's time for questions and answers. Did I do that? Did I time that well, or did I take too long?
I didn't even have to give you a 5-minute warning. You're
good.
Right on. So we do have one question too already.
All right.
Well, I will read that to you. OMOP to FHIR transform. Is there any particular IG being used here, such as US Core?
So US Core is certainly the interest for the MENDS system. We use a portion of, I assume you're talking about the US Core clinical data requirements.
It's Wayne. Wayne, if you want to unmute and clarify.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm sorry. So the US Core IG, correct? The clinical, for all your clinical data.
Yeah, so the ESP data model basically supports that, but for the MENDS project, we're supporting a subset of that that's specific to the I would say that was the subset was negotiated around the initial 2 data partners that worked for us in the data that they could make available. And that's kind of moved forward.
Okay, so so do you derive off the US Core? Do you have your own IG that you're being compliant or conformant to for this the MENDS effort?
I'm not sure I'm understanding the question.
I'm just trying interested in, because if you're having, I'm just kind of interested with the OMOP to the FHIR transform. So it sounds like everything's being done to OMOP and then you're doing the FHIR transform. I'm just kind of curious, as that bulk export gets executed and you're getting all that ND-JSON, and I'm assuming that ends up, I forget, I saw on one of your slides, it's ending up, I'm assuming that doesn't get aggregated somewhere, right? The data from each of the 5 partners.
It does not get aggregated until it gets used in the distributed analytics. So it goes into the ESP data mart as patient level information. It includes dates of service around diagnoses, around medication prescription orders, lab test results. It's the full patient record around the kind of selected clinical core.
Okay. And so that data mart client, is that something that is the same thing on every single partner's platform?
Correct.
So when
that is a bespoke data model. So that ESP data mart has an ESP data model. If you go to the ESP Health website, there's information about the data model there, if that's what you're interested in.
Okay. So is it somehow when it gets the data? So this is just another way to get the data. Just through both.
That's correct. That is correct.
Gotcha.
Really, just using the bulk data process as an ETL tool for a clinical data mart.
Gotcha. And then so it's taking that data, and then ESP, that data mart client's doing whatever it needs to do to get that data into something where it can query.
That's right. So the users of the PopMedNet data mart client, they're writing SQL against the ESP data mart data model. So it's not CQL. This is old school. This is 2005 technology, unfortunately. So they're distributing SQL to these data mart clients. The data mart clients execute those around against the database, and aggregate results then are returned.
Okay. Yep. Very cool.
Oh, okay, so we have 3 minutes left and 3 questions. And Deb Sanchez Torres, you had your hand up first, so you get to go first.
And actually, can you, my question was, could you put your contact information up again? I'd like to be able to.
Oh, so sorry.
And then I'll just ask you my questions directly. I'm not a technology person. I'm a programmatic. And I do work with states on bidirectional referral. And so I do have more questions for you offline. Thank you.
Okay, so the next one in line, we have, this one is from Bashir. Read the conversion to FHIR pipeline. Does it happen only occasionally? And
yes,
is it
yes
a batch
is the
pipeline,
answer.
or is there a streaming version of it running continuously as well?
It's a batch pipeline. So they'll, the OMOP database is refreshed on a monthly basis, and there's basically a trigger process that when that's ready, the system is informed that the data is ready, at which point the FHIR client makes a request for the data, and the whistle, you have the, I want to use my terminology correct, the cloud data flow process is executed, and then the whistle transforms. So the JSON gets generated when the OMOP data is ready. So it's really, the process is really focused around using the bulk FHIR data. There is no, the service only provides access to bulk data. So it's an interesting application, right? It's very limited to access to bulk data and bulk data only.
Okay, so we have one more question that we'll be able to take now. And then if anyone has other questions, please post them in the Whova Q&A, and Bob can tackle those after the session ends. So last one we'll take right now is, have you considered what would be required to switch from the Google Health API cloud to another FHIR server host? To what extent was that abstracted in the project?
So I think that the current FHIR bulk data service is going to be restricted to the Google Cloud, but the ESP client is certainly not. So for the purposes of the MENDS project and bringing new data partners on board, new data partners that can support the FHIR bulk data service API, however they would serve that, the changes would or the modifications needed for the ESP side of things, the bulk data client, would be minimal and hopefully just limited to configuring the site, the service specific authentication and authorization. That's our hope. I'm sure that, you know, when we actually get to try the next data partner, there will be some effort required. There always is, but it should be minimal. Did that answer the question? I think I answered the question, but I'm not sure.
That was Justin's question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Much appreciated. That's exactly what I was wondering.
Okay, great.
Awesome. And we are out of time. So sorry, folks. Bob, you did a fantastic job. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Question. Yeah, there's one more question out in Hoover. So if you could hop on there whenever you can and follow up, that would be great. Thank you all for attending today and have a great rest of your day.
All right. I'll definitely get to respond to questions later today. It's not going to be right away, but please be patient with me. Thanks, everybody.